Merry Christmas and happy holidays as the Indianapolis Colts head south to take on the Atlanta Falcons on Christmas Eve. Will we see the return of Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr.? And how can the Colts stop Bijan Robinson? Let's talk about it. Welcome to the Horseshoe Huddle Podcast presented by Fan Nation on SI.com, part of the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Andrew Moore, and as always, I'm joined by my fellow writer and analyst at Horseshoe Huddle, Drake Wally. And we have a very special guest tonight from all Falcons to help us break down this crucial matchup for the Indianapolis Colts, our good friend Scott Kennedy. Really appreciate you being on here tonight, Scott.
I appreciate you having me. This is going to be a fun night with I do my morning shows because I'm usually not available in the evening, so I'm glad this worked out. I call this a bonus Falcons podcast. We'll be doing Coast to Coast tomorrow on all my channels, which is an NFL preview show. I see some people starting to come in, and I got a chuckle. I told you right before we went on air, I'm like, you're going to get the Falcons crowd that comes in to watch us tonight is going to say, just come on down south. We will be hospitable guesses. Beat our tails and get our coach out of here for us, please. And I couldn't help but get a little chuckle when you said, how are you going to stop Bijan Robinson? Falcons fans will answer that one for you. Arthur Smith will stop him for you.
Hey, that's music to Colts fans' ears, because the Colts fans and Colts are in a completely different situation. You know, three-way tie atop the AFC South. Really, everything is setting up where if the Colts win out, there's a chance they might actually win the AFC South and host a playoff game for the first time in a long time. We've got a lot of fans coming in from the Falcons since we are simulcasting this on Horseshoe Huddle as well as Scott's channels. So we're going to have a lot of people in the chat tonight. Colts fans, make sure you show out as we really dive in here. So Drake, this matchup, huge for the Indianapolis Colts, you know, coming off that big win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, going down south to Atlanta. Like I wrote in my piece on Horseshoe Huddle, it can be easy to look a little bit ahead, but it seems like this team is really locked in, focused on the Falcons, and they know that they can't underestimate this team, even though they have been having some issues at the quarterback position.
Yeah, you know, it goes right back to it. Every single Sunday, any team can win. And, you know, I understand that Arthur Smith is kind of really fighting for his job right now, and there's a lot of quarterback rotations that have happened. I think Desmond Ritter's been benched twice now, and Taylor Heinicke has been benched once and now put into a starting role again. So there's a lot of ways to beat the Falcons here. But, man, again, Taylor Heinicke went out there with a team that really wasn't the best. I think they were a little more talented than what he's got in Atlanta right now. But last year he went out there and beat the Colts in a game-winning drive at the last second. So don't put Taylor Heinicke down, man. The guy is arguably still one of the best backups, right up there with Gardner Minshew, in my opinion.
Exactly. The CFO of Horseshoe Huddle, Patrick, is here. Scott, we call Patrick the CFOs because he can single-handedly fund us with all the super chats he's given us over the few weeks. So Patrick, really appreciate it, but he says, I'm in a tough spot. Colts playing Bijan this week, who is on my fantasy team in the playoffs. Let's hope the final score is 72-68 Colts. Hey, Patrick, you'd be right in there if that happens. Stats. Matt is in the house. Let's get that division lead this weekend. And then we've got Keith Robbins, who looks from the Falcons side of things. Why don't we put Arthur Smith at quarterback? Hey, I think the Colts would absolutely love that. So if you're new and just joining us, if you haven't done so, please go follow Horseshoe Huddle on all of our socials. Like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and then subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night. We're closing in on that goal of 2,000 subscribers by the end of the regular season, only about 100 away. So if you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button, help us reach our goal. And if you can't catch us on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you're listening to us weekly, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. So gentlemen, let's dive right into it. This is a very interesting line. The Colts are 2.5-point underdogs to the Falcons this weekend. Earlier this morning when I was checking the lines out, according to DraftKings, the Colts were only 1-point favorites. So just in a little short amount of time, the line has moved some. So these teams, it's funny that you talk about that, Scott, how Falcons fans may want them to lose the coach, kind of get a different quarterback. But in all reality, the Falcons are only a game or a couple games behind for that NFC South division lead. It seems like there'd be a different feel around this team, but it definitely seems like they're going in a different direction.
The problem is, and I don't say this as hyperbole when I say it, is the Atlanta Falcons schedule is probably the weakest Falcons schedule in the history of Atlanta Falcons football. And I don't mean that as I'm not a shock jock, say things for a reaction. I mean it literally. When you go through all of the schedule, the backup quarterbacks they faced, the rookie quarterbacks they faced, I think in their first 4 or 5 games, the total number of quarterback starts that they had was like 4 because they were playing new players. Then you go into Carolina and lose. As of right now, as of today, the Atlanta Falcons, there are 6 teams that have been eliminated from playoff contention. That's it. 3 weeks ago, there's 6 teams. The Atlanta Falcons are 2-4 against those 6 teams.
Oh, wow.
2-4 against those 6 teams. And their 8 losses, they're 6-8, and their 8 losses, their winning percentage of those teams that have beaten them that they're 0-8 against is .375. So that's like taking a 6-11 team and going 0-8 against them. So Falcons fans aren't morons. They realize this is a bad team. This is a bad team, and the only reason they're in it is because their schedule is even worse. Because if this was if you take the Colts schedule that they've gone against, it's actually fairly similar. But if you go across Baltimore Ravens, some of those other teams that they've played, this team is 3 wins instead of 6. And Falcons fans they're ready for change. Now, you hate to just root against your team, but there's nobody that's going to shed a tear in Atlanta if the Colts come down and beat the Atlanta Falcons. They'll be like, all right, that's one step closer to getting the change we need. That's the attitude that's in Atlanta right now.
We have our first super chat of the evening with the GOAT Logan Schmidt. Good to see you, buddy. He says Colts whoop the Falcons respectfully. So we'll see if that happens. I think a lot of people are going into this game thinking that the Colts should be favored. Logan, really appreciate all of your support, buddy. And it was I don't think you were on last week, but it was earlier this week. Great to meet you at the Colts game last week and have you break the streak of finally getting to witness a Colts victory. But yeah, Scott, it just seems like you think about the Atlanta Falcons and they have a lot of talent. Robinson, talk about Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Jesse Bates, who's from Fort Wayne, my hometown, AJ Terrell. You would think that this team with all the talent around there would be a much better, and it seems like they're just kind of in that middle of the ground, can't really get out of their own way, it seems like. So Drake, I want to kind of go to you on this, on the Colts side of things. This is a huge opportunity for the Colts. We're not going to really dive into it too much, but Trevor Lawrence likely doesn't play this week due to the concussion. CJ Stroud has practically already been ruled out against as the Texans take on the Browns. So really, those 2 teams could lose this weekend, and if the Colts do win, they're alone at the top of the AFC South, which is 2 games remaining. This is a huge opportunity for this team to really gain an edge in this division race.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, these are professional football players. They play for their jobs. They play for money. They play for their families. They have a lot to play for. Okay, but when you kind of get past the surface of that stuff, kind of like what Scott said and the way the fans feel, is that the Colts, I think it's not that the Falcons aren't going to play hard. It's that the Colts, I think, are going to play with far more to lose than Atlanta does. Because if you talk about that situation happening, and God forbid you fall into a perfect scenario where both the Texans and Jags lose, and you lose also to a team that, like Scott said, is out there really just trying to finish the season. That's all they're trying to do. Boy, that puts you right back in the spot you were already in. So this is a huge game for Indianapolis. And again, even guys like Jake Matthews, I don't know if he's been ruled out, but I know that he was struggling with injuries. Great offensive lineman, great tackle, one of the best. And then you've got Jonnu Smith also playing pretty well too, Tyler Algier. There's guys on that team that if you let them become underrated in your mind, man, they're going to make you pay. I mean, these are professional football players, and they're playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So,
and that's why the Colts are not favored in this game, despite what your instincts would tell you, because there's still that thought process. Looking at the Atlanta Falcons, if they put it together, they could they've got weapons on offense. They've got a highly paid offensive line. Jake Matthews has been okay, but on the right side, they missed Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry last week. And then they started a different center. But it hasn't really mattered. They haven't been able to run the ball. They went from the 4th best, most efficient rushing offense in the NFL last year to drafting a running back in the top 10 and an offensive guard with the number 2 pick, and they have dropped to 27th year over year after making that investment. The defense, they put a lot of money into it on the defensive side of the ball, and the defense is playing really well. They have given up some late leads because the offense hasn't been able to get out of its own way. And by the 4th quarter, that team's gassed, and you lose a 13-10, a 9-7 type game. And some people say, well, what about the defense giving up that late drive? Dude, the game should have been over long time ago if the offense could get out of its own way. So you got Kyle Pitts, you got Tyler Algier, you got Cordero Patterson, Bijan Robinson, Drake London. Each one of those players is capable of taking over a game. Oh, yeah. But by God, Arthur Smith hasn't figured out how to get any one of them except the outlier of a big Bijan Robinson game or a big Drake London game. And Kyle Pitts hadn't had a big game in his career.
Exactly. And that you kind of, when you're talking about how the defense, maybe they're trying to hold things together and the offense can't get out of its own way, that screams the 2022 Indianapolis Colts, talking about how the defense tried to keep things together and just ran out of gas towards the end. So when we look at this matchup, Gardner Minshew had a really good, efficient game last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, coming down south to face the Atlanta Falcons, which I think they're 8th against the pass. So it's going to be a step up from what he faced against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We play this game every week, Drake. Which Gardner Minshew are we going to get? Are we going to see more Minshew magic, or is he going to revert back to being kind of skittish and starting to turn the ball over? What do you think?
Well, I think, it really could hinge on if Jonathan Taylor plays, because don't get me wrong, I understand that Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson went out there and they played, let's be honest, fantastic, given what they were thrown into. But man, Minshew, I'll always say this every episode because he's so hot and cold sometimes with his performances that it really all comes down to the ground game. I think that you need to get the ground game going because like you said, they're 8th against the pass. They have fast football players. All right. The Falcons do have fast guys in the secondary. Guys like Terrell will take the football away. Jesse Bates has 5 out of the team's 7 interceptions. Okay. So this guy, you talk about a ball hawk. That dude will go out there and take the ball away. So Minshew can't have errant passes like that. You got to establish a rhythm on the ground, and it'll open up a lot more. And it might actually, dare I say it, it might hinge even more if Michael Pittman plays, because if for some reason MPJ doesn't suit up, you might be seeing a whole lot more running than what you would without him or with him in the game. So it's all going to hinge on who's healthy and if they can get the ground game going.
Now, the biggest thing that we've seen throughout the season about Gardner Minshew is the pressure. He hasn't been as cool and calm in the pocket as he normally has been. So how are the Atlanta Falcons at getting after the quarterback? And do you think they're going to be able to really attack this Colts offensive line?
Do I have good news for you? Stats Matt comes in and says Atlanta's not a big sack team. They're not a big pressure team either. No, they're not. They're very good on the back end. They're very good against the run. They're stout. They're able to throw some numbers at you at the edge position, but overall, they're not a big pressure team, which is amazing at how well they've been able to do on the defensive side of the ball, considering they don't get a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Now, the better quarterbacks are going to chew them to pieces. And they haven't faced a lot of the better quarterbacks this year is what it boils down to. If I start running through, I'm like, rookie, back up. Here's Josh Dobbs coming in off the MARTA train and walking in the first quarter after he just got his contract and beating the Falcons with the Minnesota Vikings. So if Gardner Minshew is one of those guys who with the time can pick you apart, but he's a little bit of a wild card no matter what. But he's 6-1 on interceptions to touchdowns. If he's not turning the ball over, the Colts win this game pretty clearly. Because the opposite side of that, the Colts are really good about getting after the quarterback and really good about turning the ball over. The Falcons give up a lot of sacks and they give up a lot of turnovers. Oh no.
It's just a very bad matchup.
This matchup favors Indy A lot. Not to mention the form that both teams are in. There's a soccer term for you. The form that they're in right now is 5-1 versus, oh my God, we just lost to the Carolina Panthers. We were in first place.
Yeah.
That's the Atlanta mindset right now.
It's just a bad matchup for the Atlanta Falcons, and that's a really good thing for the Indianapolis Colts, especially, Drake, as you mentioned, if Jonathan Taylor plays, if Michael Pittman Jr. plays. Well, good news, Colts fans. Jonathan Taylor, a full participant in practice again today. So was Michael Pittman Jr., was not in a red non-contact jersey, so it seems like he's quickly making his way through the concussion protocol after taking that hit last Saturday. So it really seems like the Colts are going to have their two best playmakers back out on the field against this Atlanta defense, and you put that together with Minshew having that confidence over the past few games. Colts have won 5 of 6, which is pretty remarkable considering what we all thought about what was going to happen with this team when Anthony Richardson went down in week 5. So what do you think about Pittman and Jonathan Taylor? Are we going to see what we did the last time these two played together against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where Taylor ran for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Pittman had 100 yards receiving. Are we going to see a return to JT and MPJ leading this offense, Drake?
You know, I think it's really going to be interesting because I would expect Taylor to just get a full workload. I don't know why I feel that way. Like I wrote a piece earlier and said, don't be surprised if he doesn't. Kind of changed my mind. I really feel like, especially with the fact that it's not a giant club on his hand, very nice and free forming type of glove. I think they're going to trot him out there. I think, though, that until proven otherwise, we just have to keep saying Michael Pittman is going to be the guy. If he goes out there and plays, I mean, he's going to be the guy. And he's done it against every defense he's faced. It doesn't really matter who he faces. But I will say that perhaps Atlanta's got some kind of an idea to force Minshew to go elsewhere because, look, man, not to discount Josh Downs or discount Alec Pierce or anybody, but you got Gardner Minshew throwing you the football. Michael Pittman's been able to get the hell open for some pretty easy completions and also takes the ball and wins 50-50 shots all the time from Gardner Minshew. So you take away that talent, though, and you give him a guy that's like a vertical threat only for the most part and a slot receiver that's a rookie still working things out, even though he's talented. You could force him to make some mistakes. And like Scott said, I think that if Minshew goes out there and turns it over a time or two, you're going to put Atlanta right there in the mix.
Exactly. And I think, Scott, this is kind of where I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the run defense, or where do you think I guess the better question is, where do you think this Atlanta defense's attack and game plan is going to be? Are they going to focus in on one guy or focus in on stopping Jonathan Taylor and making Minshew beat them? What is their general strategy against guys like Taylor and Pittman?
Their strategy, they've given up while they have what it says like an 8th best passing defense, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like, I call it seat of the pants analytics. It feels like bend but don't break. It feels like drive, turnover, drive, field goal. And they're not giving up a lot of touchdowns, but they're giving up some yards. They were really good against the run till Grady Jarrett got hurt, and then David Onyemata got hurt. David Onyemata could be back. He's still fighting it a little bit, but you got big Calais Campbell, Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata, and Bud Dupree as a front four with some good linebackers behind them. They were really, really tough to run on early in the season. And then you had Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell in the background, and it made for a good offense, a good defense. The problem is they're still missing that alpha pass rusher. Those guys are big defensive linemen, run stoppers, who can get you some sacks. Big Onyemata and Grady Jarrett. Jarrett especially is nice and quick, but they're still missing that pass rush. Who do I think can have a big game for the Colts? Now, you ask about Jonathan Taylor. I think it's just, the old remember the Titans, it's an awfully thin playbook, coach. Said 7 plays. It's like Novocaine. Give it time. It always works. That's how you can wear down the Atlanta Falcons defense because the injuries they've had up front. A big key, I think, a guy who could have a big game isn't necessarily Pittman, though you move him around because AJ Terrell is really good as a corner. And Michael Pittman's great. I love him. I think he's going to make a bag this offseason one way or another. But I don't think they've got the depth across their corners in Atlanta to deal with the kind of season that Josh Downs has been having, and look for maybe Alec Pierce to have another breakout game. So receivers 2 and 3 could be more dangerous. I would love to say it's a tight end. I just haven't seen the tight end for the Colts this year really have that breakout time. So the guy I would watch, Falcons fans, the guy I'm looking at, Colts fans, for this game is Josh Downs.
That could be crucial, especially over the middle of the field. Now, does AJ Terrell typically follow the top wide receiver, or is he more of a guy that just handles one side of the field?
They move. He's one side of the field typically. So either why, but he's not just a matchup guy. You know, the old joke Deion said, I don't need all this schemes. Deion Sanders says,
right,
walks up and points to the I got him.
Mm-hmm.
You guys figure it else out. What else you want to do? AJ's not that guy. They play within a scheme. They play a lot of zone. And they've really struggled at their second safety spot. They used the number 2 pick 3 years ago on Richie Grant. It hasn't really panned out. And then the rookie DeMarco Hellams has started taking some snaps in there. And then Jeff Okudah has had a little bit of a rebirth for the Falcons after getting traded for a bag of chips out of Detroit this past year. But he's earned himself some money on this next contract because he'll be a free agent after this year. So solid, considering the injuries that I've had up front. This defense is still pretty good. Man, it doesn't matter who has been in there. Shane Steichen's offense has dropped 30 on everybody. Here's 30 for you. Here's 30 for you. Here's 31 for you. So him and D'Amico Ryans, this thing comes down to January 7th for me for Coach of the Year.
Shane Steichen has been an absolute wizard at times, being able to scheme things up for the Colts offense. And it's funny you say that, because I think what's been one of the biggest impacts of Shane Steichen, but not only Shane Steichen, but Tony Sperano Jr. Colts fans know where I'm getting the offensive line, especially right now. This offensive line is getting back to 2020, 2019 levels, where just dominating guys up front. Shane Steichen looked at Mike Tomlin and that Steelers defense and said, we're going to run it on you. Try to stop us. They ran 13 consecutive run plays against the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is just unheard of. With your number 3 and 4 running backs, just drove right down the field. The offensive line was absolutely dominating out there. And honestly, I think they have the chance to do that again. This team, this unit feels very together, very cohesive. I understand Braden Smith probably isn't going to be out there, but Blake Freeland did a really good job in the running game a week ago, settled in against TJ Watt as well. Look for this Colts offensive line to really keep that momentum going. Drake, how do you see things playing out up front and in the trenches?
I really liked the fact that Scott brought up Grady Jarrett. That's a guy that doesn't really get enough due in the NFL. He's an absolute freak of nature up front, and he is a real problem for the run game. I think that given that, and I think that given Onyemata's injury, if he doesn't go, man, you've really got a gaping hole there for a weakness in the Atlanta defense, and it's basically just run the ball. It's literally get back to the RTDB, the run the damn ball shirts and everything. That's really what you need to do, especially if you have your bell cow back in the game. He's going to be raring to go, ready to get another win. So I think that they, like you said, they have a great opportunity in front of them. Now, again, you're playing in Atlanta, a very difficult place to play. And this is a team that, while they might not have a lot to play for, they might be absolutely pissed off that they just got beat by the league's doormat. Okay. So like look at the little things here, man. This is a team that's like, look, we're still freaking professional football players, and we have names on the back of our jerseys, and we have family and friends watching us. The hell with this. We got nothing to lose. They got nothing to lose. So I think that the Colts and the Falcons are going to get a lot. You're going to see a lot of collisions happening, and you're going to see some runs get stopped for the Colts. But I do think that's really the scheme, is you got to run the ball. And if you have Jonathan Taylor in there, you have a great opportunity to get some good ones going.
Here's something to think about too, y'all, is as Corey Carter comes in, he says Atlanta Falcons won't be there. Their fans won't be there on Sunday. He's not wrong. This hasn't been – the Falcons are 4-3 at home, so take that into account. They were embarrassed in Carolina. There will be some playing for some pride there. Taylor Heinicke is coming in at quarterback. There will be maybe that new quarterback bump that they get. But you won't have problem communicating. I can get into a whole litany of reasons why, but the lower bowl will basically be empty. Atlanta Falcons fans are not one to stand for being gouged. And when they went to PSLs in the new stadium a few years ago, only corporations bought those seats. There are no fans. So when the team is struggling or it's not a big name, no offense to Indianapolis Colts fans, but that's not a big Bears, Giants, Packers, Steelers type of team where everybody is from there that lives down here in Atlanta. It's going to be empty. The lower bowl you're going to think is a going on strike game.
And that's huge because honestly, when you're thinking of a matchup in late December, that's you would think that would be a huge opportunity. And as Stats Matt said, I've seen several Colts fans finding tickets this week. So there could be a big blue presence in Atlanta this Sunday, even though it is Christmas Eve. Let's switch things up and talk about the Falcons offense here, Scott. The Arthur Smith going with Taylor Heinicke this week over Desmond Ridder. A lot of Colts fans think that, we would rather face Desmond Ridder. We think that he would be the easier option to go up against rather than Taylor Heinicke. Like Drake said, Heinicke beat the Colts last year when he was with the Washington Commanders. So do you think this helps the Atlanta offense going to Taylor Heinicke, or is the move really, really mute at this point?
I think the offense is more effective under Taylor Heinicke. But the 3 games that he was in, the Falcons are 0-3. He came in during this halftime at Arizona, and they lost to Arizona in Kyler Murray's first start back in a year. Then they went to then they came home to Minnesota. They put up 31. It was 31-28. They put up some points. And then he lost at Tennessee when Will Levis had the greatest debut in the history of debut quarterbacks when he had 4 touchdowns. That's not hyperbole either. That's a fact. 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and X amount of yards was the best ever. So the Falcons defense didn't step up, and Heinicke played better. So would you rather face Desmond Ridder? Yeah, because he's going to do something that's going to keep you in the game. That's just been his MO all season. I tweeted out, I'm like, man, when he's got 15 turnovers and then probably 25 turnover-worthy plays at least, and by God, if every single one of them isn't in the red zone, I'll buy you some pizza. I was like, whenever he turns the ball over, my goodness, he gets his money's worth. They are important.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at this Colts defensive line as well, one of the big things, as they love to say, they're going to try to keep Taylor Heinicke in the well, Drake. I think that's something they didn't do a very good job at last season when he was with the Commanders. They let him get outside the pocket and make plays. This Colts defensive line, a return to form last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4 sacks after not being able to really touch Jake Browning and the Bengals a week prior. But when you have guys like Samson Ebukam, Dio Dangbo, DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye really getting after the quarterback, it makes a big difference. The Colts tied the franchise record, the Indy franchise record for sacks in the season with 46. I think they at least get 1 sack and break the record this weekend, but the way I'm feeling about how this defensive line is really getting after it, and just some of the injuries on the Atlanta Falcons offensive line, plus they've been giving up some sacks at a higher rate. I'm looking at another multi-sack game for the Colts.
Yeah, and the last year when he played, he did make a lot of plays outside the pocket. And that's something a lot of people don't really talk about with Taylor Heinicke is the guy can move, and he's also he's very agile. I know that he had a ridiculous sky over the end zone run. I can't remember what team it was the Falcons were playing, but basically the
Buccaneers against Tom Brady in the playoffs.
There's just been multiple times where the guy showcased that he's got mobility. Now the thing is, I know that everyone wants to talk about Buckner and they want to talk about Kwity Paye and everything like that. But Dio Dangbo has elevated his play. He's playing out of his mind right now, at least to his standard, from where he was, especially coming off of an injury to start his career. He's playing fantastic. Really wasn't much of a piece last season, especially at that point in the year when they played the Commanders. And instead of Yannick Ngakoue, getting destroyed in the ground game and over pursuing on pass defense or pass rushing, you have Samson Ebukam now. Okay, that's a completely different issue than dealing with Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, he over pursued all the time, and a lot of his sacks came from the interior pressure, bailing the quarterback right into his arms. So I think it's a way different type of game, and it's due to Tyquan Lewis. He's actually playing this year. He's been a great depth piece. So those guys are the guys I'm looking for. And I do think that Kwity Paye, though, look for him to get a sack again. I think that last week it was Ebukam and Odengbo each had like 1.5, and then the defensive tackles each had a half sack.
And Samson Ebukam is Pro Football Focus 14th ranked edge rusher in the NFL, had an elite grade last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, Scott, I wanted to ask you about this running game for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, Bijan Robinson gets a lot of the press, and he's a very talented back. Tyler Algier, not a slouch either. The Falcons, I think, rank around 9th in the NFL in rushing offense. I almost feel like that's how they're going to have to really rely on moving the football down the field. The Colts, when they haven't had Grover Stewart is playing on Sunday, but when they haven't had Grover Stewart and over the last couple of months, they've been susceptible to having the ball ran on them. Might be a different story on Sunday, but is that how they're going to make most of their hay, is on the ground?
You don't know. The short passing game could come into play also. Unfortunately, Heinicke, when you think of Heinicke, you think of a guy who takes a lot of risks, right? You watched him in Washington. Terry McLaurin, those guys are putting up some big yards and some questionable decisions with the ball. Then he looks like he's been muzzled when he's playing with Atlanta. It was all of a sudden everything was in 3 yards of the line of scrimmage. You're like, all right, what's going on here? Unfortunately for Atlanta, whoever is in, it's been way, way too predictable. Okay, here comes Bijan. Okay, off tackle stretch. Here comes Bijan, off tackle stretch. Well, it didn't work this time. Let's just run it 3 times into the back of the same offensive lineman who's getting outnumbered because they know what's coming. There's no imagination in it. For the last 3 years, I've said basically during the course of the game, Arthur Smith eventually hits the F it button. Let's just run the ball. And that's usually third quarter with Tyler Algier. And Algier's a hammer. He's a very underrated running back who is now starting to get some shtick because Bijan isn't being used properly, so to speak. But I just think the problem is it's too predictable in how they're trying to use him. And there was a chart out there today. I put it on my Twitter account. It showed the efficiency of play callers, and Arthur Smith wasn't just dead last. It was awful last. It's like, going back to Moneyball, there's us, there's 5 layers of crap, and then there's everybody else. That's how bad it was. I'm like, you could call him the worst play caller, least effective play caller at NFL, and that would be an understatement. So, yes, they are going to run the ball. They are going to run the ball a lot. They will have a drive where they'll have an effective drive in the course of this game where they'll go on a 13-play drive where they may throw 1 pass and they'll get some points out of it. So, again, don't turn the ball over, survive. Wait them out, you win this game.
That's something that, and obviously I don't watch the Falcons on a weekly basis. We cover the Colts for a living, but that's always been something that's just from a 10,000 foot view has always really puzzled me about Arthur Smith. I mean, you talk about the type of players they have on this team. I mean, high picks in Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts, the weapons that they have on this offense, but at least from afar, it seems like all anyone talks about is these guys aren't involved enough. And it's like, how is he not using these guys? And is it just stubbornness on his part, more of this is my scheme and we're going to stick to it, rather than fitting the scheme around what the players do best? What's your take on that? And it just to kind of inform Colts fans of maybe if that narrative is correct, and maybe why.
I think one of the problems is he's too reactive. Where, okay, this is the look we're getting, so this is what we're going to do. No, dictate. I'm better than you. I've got arguably the best offensive lineman. No offense to Quentin Nelson, but Chris Lindstrom has played better than Quentin Nelson has the last 3 years. There's opinions, there's facts. Y'all watched Quentin Nelson every game last year. I watched Quentin Nelson. Chris Lindstrom has been arguably the best offensive lineman in football over the last 2 seasons at right guard. I got Caleb McGarry, who's a run blocking monster at right tackle. I got Jake Matthews, a consummate pro. I've got all these guys. It's like, okay, well, they're taking this away, So I'm going to go and do this instead. Man, just dictate. And that's what I said. Every once in a while, it's almost like he wants to come out and we're going to be balanced. We don't always just want to run the ball. So we're going to throw it and throw it and throw it. You ask, why aren't these guys getting involved? Because they're not getting any freaking first downs. If Stats Matt is in here, my seat of the pants analytics tells me they've got to be bottom third in first downs in the NFL and probably in plays run. So you're taking away opportunities from everybody when you can't get any first downs. And then you're turning the ball over in crucial situations. It's been the offense for this team has been a disaster. It's been a disaster.
Makes sense when you can't really sustain drive. So Drake, I'm going to pass it along to you, man. You talk about Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Obviously, the Colts are going to focus on those guys with this young secondary that has been playing a lot better of late. Do you think those guys are going to have success against the likes of a Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, Kenny Moore, obviously working on another Pro Bowl season there in the slot? But what do you think these guys, or what do you think this Colts defense is going to focus on to stop these guys?
I think it's you're talking about Drake London. He's an incredibly physical receiver. He's just a massive dude to deal with, incredibly athletic. I do think you have to talk about this game from the scheming side and from the ability side. Yes, on paper, good Lord, Drake London can probably go toe-to-toe with any one of these defensive backs, especially Juju Brents. I know that he's very physical, but he's also a rookie, still working things out. I think that Kenny Moore might have the best chance. But as far as scheme you're dealing, I know Gus Bradley, he's caught a lot of flack. Look, man, he's also incredibly experienced. And when there is an offense that struggles like the Steelers offense, he knows what to do. He figures it out. I know that last season was kind of up and down, and this season's kind of been up and down, but he really does figure it out, and he's going to be able to, I think, catch on to a lot of tendencies that Arthur Smith just doesn't leave. He's stubborn, kind of like Scott said in his play calling. But as far as Kyle Pitts, man, he is a matchup nightmare, really. I think that he's got ability to beat anybody. He's a tight end that has the body and the speed of a wide receiver, and he's got great ability as a receiver, just good route running and everything else. It's just his usage. And I think that he's not a bigger tight end, so maybe he doesn't break as many tackles. He doesn't block as well. But, man, his usage has been really rough. I still think that him and Jonnu Smith, though, are an incredibly overlooked tight end duo, and I think that they can absolutely massacre linebackers if you're not ready for them.
And Scott, this is why we love Stats Matt coming in. He says Falcons are 12th in plays, 13th in first downs, but 26th in points and 21st in yards per drive. That's just a brutal way to live as an offense, and you're not going to win very many games when you're putting up stats and numbers like that.
Like I said, I think there's probably another one to look at is number of 3 and outs, because like I said, they'll go on these 14 play drives in the middle of the third quarter, which will balance out those number of plays without ever throwing the ball. It'll just be Tyler Algier, Cordell Patterson, Bijan Robinson, Algier. And then they'll score. And then Arthur Smith will say, well, why would I give it to Bud? Did you not see how well Algier did then? Why would I give it to anybody else? Because that's the only drive you had that was worth a damn. You know? So, getting back to Kyle Pitts, that's a whole other discussion. Route running, no, Drake, no. His route running is really poor. His effort off the ball, off the line of scrimmage is really poor. Now, you can make apologies for Kyle Pitts saying, okay, he's been doing this for 3 years. He was really good when he had an accurate quarterback in Matt Ryan. But he's lining up about 77% of his time either in the slot or out wide at wide receiver, not in line as a tight end. So he's getting cornerbacks on him, and he's not getting separation in order to get off of a cornerback, and he hasn't had quarterback play in the last 2 seasons who can throw accurately to a spot. I'm a big wide receiver guy. I have a huge bias. They're always open. I can get it to them. But if I've got an inaccurate quarterback that can't get it in a spot, if I underthrow or overthrow a big target, then I take away him being big. Because if it's underthrown, he's got to come back through the defensive back. Well, that's offensive PI. That's an incompletion or worse, an interception. And if I overthrow him, nobody's got a chance. So Kyle Pitts has been ineffective the last 2 seasons in Atlanta. He's not who you have to worry about. Drake London's a beast. If they feed Drake London, he can have one of those games like you started seeing last week with Michael Pittman that Michael Pittman's capable of having. the $150 and a pair of touchdowns. But will you see it? Will you see that? You just never know. It's too inconsistent.
That's the big question. X Factor time, gentlemen. Let's go around the horn. We'll start with Scott, then go to Drake, and I'll finish this up here. Scott, give me one guy. Offense, defense could be anywhere on the team. Who is your X Factor for the Falcons to get this win on Sunday?
Goodness gracious, there's so many to say. I mean, an obvious one for me on defense is just Gardner Minshew. Know where Jesse Bates is.
Mm-hmm.
Know where he's at. He's smart. He's probably going to be all pro this year on a team that won't make the playoffs. That says just how good he has been. For my money, I can't think of two better free agent signings this year than Ebukam and Jesse Bates.
Mm-hmm.
Worth every single penny that those guys have gotten. On the offensive side of the ball, the X factor is there's I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like, so that's one thing, but it's obviously Taylor Heinicke. I mean, when you got a new quarterback coming in, he could go on a heater that the Falcons have seen. Every new quarterback has played their best game of the year against them.
Mm-hmm.
Or he could be, where is this team's mentality at? Do they respond because they're embarrassed? Because if they do, they can win this game. There's more than enough talent on this Atlanta Falcons team. That's why everybody's so mad at the wasted year, the wasted opportunity that they've had this year. Taylor Heinicke comes out and goes on a heater, the Falcons will win this game. You put him on his ass most of the game, they got no chance. And the Colts are very capable of doing that.
I agree. Drake, what do you think? X Factor, buddy.
Oh, man. I was going to say one player, but I'm going to go with Grover Stewart. I'm going to go with Grover Stewart because I think that, like Scott mentioned, Tyler Algier is really a hammer for the offense. I think that you are going to see a lot of number 90 running into Tyler Algier. He's going to have to really try to keep Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and that smash mouth style that Arthur Smith does tend to go toward. You got to be able to stop that, because along with, if Heinicke goes out there and starts getting confidence and completing passes and this and that, if you let them run the ball, especially up the middle, man, that's a recipe for disaster if you're the Colts, because this is a running football team and they predicate their entire offense off of how well that's going.
I agree. Stats, Matt, taking the words right out of my mouth. Stats, Matt says, I'll say X factor for Indy is JT. Keep the Falcons defense on the field, wear them down. On defense, I'll go both defensive ends. Keep Taylor Heinicke in the pocket. Don't let him create. I was just going to say it's Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor coming back from that thumb injury, something that to keep in mind. Since it was a thumb injury, he has been able to stay conditioned. So it's not like he's going to have to work off the rust. He even talked to reporters today and told them that he's been working out, staying in shape, and he's ready to go when that time comes. Full participant both days this week. Yesterday was a walkthrough. Today, full participant in practice. JT's going to be ready to go. And I think we saw against the Buccaneers, he was back to being the Jonathan Taylor that the Colts fans know and love. He was unstoppable against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the best rushing defenses in the entire NFL. You go up against a Falcons defensive line and defense in general that against the run, not as good as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jonathan Taylor is excited to get back out there. I think the Colts offensive line is going to continue to roll like it did last week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Jonathan Taylor has a big game. Indy is going to be really tough to stop. All right, guys. 1 p.m. on Sunday, Christmas Eve, Colts at Falcons. Doesn't seem like the Falcons fans really want their team to win. Colts fans dying for this team to win and really hoping for a loss by Jacksonville and Houston to have sole possession of first place in the AFC South. Let's go the opposite way. Drake, who do you got on Sunday? Colts, Falcons, and why?
So I actually think the Colts are going to win, but they're going to win 23-17. Okay. And I think that they're going to pick off Taylor Heinicke when he's attempting a game-winning drive. I think that, look, man, I think I think highly of Heinicke. I think that he's got so much ability given the position and the pay that he gets, and just kind of a backup journeyman type guy. Boy, oh boy, when he's on, holy crap, he's really, really, really hard to stop. But when you, like Scott said, if you can knock him on his butt a couple times, like any other quarterback, man, he becomes a backup, So I do think that it's going to be close. I think that there's going to be a lot of, back and forth and a lot of hammering the run game into each other's defenses. But I do think the Colts get this done, but it will not be easy.
All right, Scott, as the Falcons expert here, do the Colts rip off another one, or do the Falcons get one at home?
Oh, it's tough to tell. You just don't know. And part of this comes down to where Stats Matt is asking the question. What does Scott think about the offensive line for Atlanta? All the guys being limited. They had 3 guys last week that were out. And this is a game. This is a team that had played their entire first five all year up until this point. Now, all of a sudden, as the season's gone in the tank, guys are getting a little niggled up a little more often. This team's in the playoffs. Are these guys playing or not? I have these questions. Jake Matthews is questionable. He hadn't missed a game since the second game of his career. So Chris Lindstrom, he doesn't miss games either. McGarry's missed one here or there. But is it really all of these guys are getting nicked up at once, or is it like, you know what? I think I'll wait till next year now. That's kind of, where is the mentality of this team? I don't know. I really don't. We'll find out. That's what I'm interested to find out. At the beginning of the season, I picked this game as a win for the Atlanta Falcons, but a lot has changed in 2 months, let alone since the beginning of the season. You mentioned the interest in the Indianapolis Colts. Well, on Halloween, this team was 3-5. This team's 8-6 now, and playing really well. And the expectations and the mentality for this Atlanta Falcons team, I just don't know. If they stand up and play to their capabilities, which they've only done for a half, maybe here and there all year, they win this game. They're a good squad that is playing poorly. I just don't have any faith in them. I don't have any trust that this team puts it together. I don't have any trust in Arthur Smith and his offense. Colts, in a strange one, call it something like 22-15, some type of weird score out there. It means more for the Colts. The Colts believe right now, and they're a hell of a story. Colts take it. And real quick, if these scores come in, if Patrick says 34-12 Colts, 35-17, Arthur Smith's done on Monday.
Yeah, he'll be canned, especially at home.
I would agree. Stats Matt with 27-17. We had CMD SR with 35-17. Winston going with Falcons 20-17.
That could happen.
So we've got a Falcons pick in here. Sean Contright, Colts win 27-17. Is Patrick 34-12. And now we've got Keith Robbins saying that the Falcons win. Logan Schmidt 31-16 Colts. So a lot of you guys are on the Colts. Keith saying 21-17 Falcons. A lot of you guys are on the Colts, and I'm going that way as well. I'm going Colts 24, Falcons 16. I think the Falcons are going to be able to get a touchdown, but then it's going to be the Young Wei Koo show, or Young Ho Koo
Young Wei,
show.
You had it. No,
Young
right.
Wei.
It's
Young Wei.
It's Young Wei.
Young Wei Koo show, and it's going to be the Colts are going to tighten up probably in the red zone, field goals for him. And on the flip side, I think the Colts are going to be able to really run the football. We're probably going to see a touchdown or two from Jonathan Taylor. Might sneak one into one of the tight ends. I think once we get deep into that red zone, maybe we see a Drew Ogletree sighting. But I think this Colts team just has, again, too much focus on this game. They got a lot more to play for. They've won 5 out of their last 6, and it seems like the Atlanta Falcons are really starting to crumble at the base. And when you have players not really starting to believe or not really thinking they have much to play for, having just that difference in mentality can really make a difference once all those guys are on the field on Sunday. So I think the Colts get the victory. I think they move to 9-6. We'll have to see what happens with the other 2 division games, but it's very possible that on Christmas morning, the Colts are the top dog in the AFC South, which is absolutely wild to talk about, considering what this fan base was talking about and what we were all thinking when Anthony Richardson went down with that shoulder injury against the Tennessee Titans. So I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I certainly think that we're going to see some physical play on both sides, but I think the Colts are just going to be too much at the end of the day, and they're going to get this victory.
We'll see. It should be fascinating. And again, this is the race in the playoffs in the wild cards in the AFC is much more interesting because they're actually good teams that are fighting for it, not teams that are 2 games under 500. That doesn't interest me at all. So you got the Bengals coming back and showing life. Who wants to play the Buffalo Bills right now? The Broncos aren't completely out of it. The Cleveland Browns. Here comes the Joe Flacco show. So it's been real interesting. And just programming note, I'm going to drop the link to my YouTube channel into the chat because we do on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. we do coast to coast football. I'm in Atlanta, my partner's in Seattle, so we are coast to coast with your football coverage. 9 a.m. we're going to be going over all of the top matchups and all these playoffs matchups. Last week, of all the games that involved playoff games, I only missed one. I didn't miss the Steelers and Colts. I'll tell you that one. You know who I missed? The Atlanta Falcons and Carolina Panthers.
Oh my goodness.
That was the only one I missed. So tune in tomorrow. Come and see us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, make sure you check that out. Scott is a great friend of ours. He's an absolute legend. Scott, we really appreciate you coming on and talking Colts Falcons with us, giving us an inside scoop on what this Falcons team looks like for a team that these guys only play each other once every 4 years. So Colts fans probably don't watch the Falcons much and vice versa. So really appreciate you coming on. Tell the people where they can go check out, not only on your socials, but on the site as well.
Yeah, that's the big one for me. Go to that YouTube channel I dropped in the link and give me a subscribe. I do Falcons. I put up a bunch of Colts stuff there. I'll do some of the top clips. I've got a Mike McDaniel clip up there that's freaking hilarious from the Dolphins. And then next month, y'all, you guys know this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have probably 85 to 90 highlights from the Senior Bowl for the upcoming draft class that comes up. That's my February and March. So lots to cover. Enjoyed doing it, and I've enjoyed working with y'all here recently too. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Scott. Make sure you check out all of his stuff. A fantastic writer, and fantastic person. Scott, really appreciate you coming on, bud. And that's Scott. That's Scott Kennedy, guys.
Scott Kennedy, baby.
Yeah, the absolute legend himself, coming on to preview Colts Falcons with us, and it seems like the Colts have an opportunity here to really take a stranglehold in the AFC South. So let's go over the Colts injury report, Drake, and finish out before and wrap things up here. So looking at who we've got here, Jonathan Taylor, like I said, was a full participant, as well as Michael Pittman Jr. Eric Johnson also came back full. Really good sign there. And Matt Gay was a limited participant. So some really big names for the Colts coming back and look to be on pace to play on Sunday.
Yeah, and hey, obviously the biggest ones are Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman Jr. because that is the entire freaking offense on its highest level. Those two are in the conversation when you're talking about a good offensive day. So I'm also pretty excited to see Matt Gay is getting back to limited. He's really struggled. Kind of makes you think it was in the right hip, correct? That's also his kicking leg. Maybe that twitch, maybe that torque wasn't where it should be. So maybe he goes out there and gets 3 for 3. But yeah, it's looking pretty good ahead of a very, very, very important interconference game.
Exactly. Stats Matt with the super chat. Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas to you, Stats Matt, and your entire family. Always love Stats Matt coming in here, one of the loyal faithful and one of the biggest supporters of what Drake and I do. Really appreciate, buddy, and all the support you always give us. To finish out the injury report, Drake, these guys did not practice on Thursday. Jack Anderson with an illness. Zach Moss still trying to work his way back from that forearm injury, as well as Braden Smith Smith. Braden Smith did not practice. Sagun Olubi also rounds out that group with a hip injury, not practicing. So talking about the big names there with Zach Moss and Braden Smith, doesn't look like those, at least we probably can't expect Braden Smith to be out there on Sunday. We'll still have to see about Zach Moss. And if Zach Moss can't go, I know Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson had a really good game against the Steelers, but you can't really rely on that. Jonathan Taylor coming back, if Zach Moss can't be out there, makes it even more crucial.
Yeah, and hey, Blake Freeland, while he did recover in the ground game, he struggled again against the pass rush. So I think that while Atlanta doesn't have that superstar pass rusher, man, this is also a good opportunity for Blake Freeland if he goes out there and starts again to get back to square one and have a better game than he did against TJ Watt.
Absolutely agree 100% there. It's going to be huge for Blake Freeland to play well to keep this ground going on Sunday. Let's talk about the latest Colts news and rumors as our last segment here, and the news that's been really circulating ever since they were healthy scratches last Saturday. Let's dive right into it. Drake, the Colts placed wide receiver Isaiah McKenzie and cornerback Tony Brown on the reserve suspended list for conduct detrimental to the team. Both those guys have been suspended for at least the remainder of the regular season. And as it was reported yesterday, when the local indie media and our own Jake Arthur was able to get into the locker room, both Isaiah McKenzie and Tony Brown's lockers have been removed from the locker room. So I've seen some rumors going out there on X about potentially what they did dealing with wildlife. I want to tell you guys that is not true. I got that on full authority. That is not the reason those guys were suspended. However, the Colts are being very, very tight-lipped about this what happened and what's transpired since. But honestly, Drake, to me, these guys, yes, they played special teams, but it's really just a more of a distraction that the Colts do not need right now. They're all their focus needs to be on this playoff push, not a couple of special teamers getting into trouble.
Yeah, and look, man, I'll just make it very brief. Accountability. All right, Shane Steichen is all about accountability, and this is no offense to Isaiah McKenzie or Tony Brown. While Tony Brown had some good special teams plays, neither one of these guys have really panned out where they were expected to, I think. And, mix that in with whatever they did. Shane Steichen doesn't mess around. He wants to win, and he wants a winning culture.
Exactly. CMDSR says Rashad needs to do a saddle up so we can find out what happened with Brown and McKenzie. I think I can share this since Shad is our teammate. We talk to Shad
he won't care.
all the time. He doesn't know either. So we have been talking back and forth. Like I said, the Colts have been very, very tight-lipped about this. So no details have been released to Shad either. If it did, we would obviously report it here to you guys on the show with Shad's blessing. But yeah, like I said, Colts being very tight-lipped about this. So hopefully this doesn't cause any more distractions. But on a lighter note, Colts signed running back Tyler Goodson to the 53-man roster this week, and well-deserved after a fantastic performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers, really bringing some good running back depth to the 53-man roster for the Colts, Drake.
Yeah, he averaged 6.5 yards per carry in that game, and it was a career day for him. Earned every bit of this roster spot, and hey, maybe he's going to have an opportunity to do something with it, especially if Moss can't go.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. He brings just a different style, more of a change of pace back than the other two. So definitely look for Tyler Goodson to continue to have a role in this offense. Some other practice squad moves for the Colts. They signed defensive end Zach McLeod, wide receiver Jaden Mickens, and wide receiver Jawan Winfrey. We know that name all too well. Yeah. It did come out that the Colts worked out oh my goodness! Don't make me forget
Jarvis
his name.
Landry.
Jarvis Landry. I'm gonna punch myself for forgetting that.
He hasn't been in the NFL in a while.
Just completely blanked. I was literally picturing him and completely blanked on his name. But Jarvis Landry, they did work Jarvis Landry out this week. Decided not to sign the veteran wide receiver. And Drake, I'm not mad about that. I don't think Jarvis Landry really fits with this team and what they were looking for. They were more looking for a wide receiver for depth and somebody that could come in and play special teams, and that's what those two wide receivers and Mickens and Winfrey do.
Yeah, and look, Landry, I think that he's, hopefully he finds a team, but I think he's a little too high dollar for, like you said, what the Colts were looking for at this point.
Exactly. And then to kind of close things out here, the Colts released guard Lewis Kidd from the practice squad to make room for those players. So Drake, Colts Falcons on Sunday, it's going to be a good one. And like I said, huge game for the Indianapolis Colts, especially if the Jacksonville Jaguars and Houston Texans end up losing on Sunday. Not a guarantee, because we saw Case Keenum was able to pull out a victory last week against the Titans, and who knows what happens with the Buccaneers against the Jaguars. Buccaneers have been hot, but maybe Trevor Lawrence shakes off that concussion and does suit up and goes out there and gets the win for the Jaguars. All the Colts need to do is focus on what they can control, winning this game against the Falcons and not looking too far ahead, winning each one of these games moving forward, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah, you can't control what the other teams are going to do. All you can do is control your own fate. And look, I know this team is down on paper. They just lost to the freaking Panthers, which is never a good look, especially with how bad they played. But they're playing at home, and I'm sure there's a couple guys on that team that are pissed the hell off. So don't underestimate this Falcons team, but I still think the Colts are going to get this one done.
Colts win on Sunday and could be AFC South leaders on Monday. So that's our show, everyone. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. Colts fans, Falcons fans. I want to give another shout out to Scott Kennedy, our fantastic guest this evening. Scott works closely with us, and it's always good to chat and talk football with such a great mind that Scott Kennedy has. So if you haven't done so, please go follow us on all of our socials, like Horseshoe Huddle on Facebook, follow at Colts on FN on X, and subscribe to the Horseshoe Huddle YouTube channel. Hit that bell so you know whenever Drake and I go live every Monday and Thursday night, whenever Shad goes live with the Saddle Up Show, so you never miss an episode. And also make sure to go follow Scott Kennedy on X at Scout Kennedy. And then also he did throw his YouTube link in the chat, so make sure you grab that and go give him a subscription over there on his YouTube channel as well. And for Colts fans, if you can't catch us live and you can't catch us on YouTube, don't worry. Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there as well. So make sure you subscribe, give us a 5-star review so we can reach other Colts fans just like you. If you guys haven't noticed on Horseshoe Huddle, Drake has been an absolute menace, writing away. There's been a lot of Colts news coming out this week, and Drake has been on top of it all and then some. So Drake, go tell the people what they can check out on the site.
So I did a little piece on, the offensive depth in the backfield on Sermon and Goodson. So go check that one out. And then there's going to be one that's going to be released, which is the 5 keys to an Indianapolis Colts victory against the Atlanta Falcons. So be on the lookout for that one.
Make sure you check that out on horseshoehuddle.com. For myself, wrote a piece that came out today about Gardner Minshew and his mindset heading into this final playoff push, the confidence that he is bringing to this team, and what Shane Steichen thinks of how Gardner Minshew has been as the Colts make a final push to the playoffs. Then tomorrow, piece on Jonathan Taylor, and he really went into depth about what happened with that thumb injury, what his feelings are, what his feelings were when it happened, and how excited he is to get back and what he can contribute to this team as they try to capture the AFC South crown. So go check out those pieces and all the other fantastic writing by our colleagues at horseshoehuddle.com. Go follow Drake at DWalsterDrake on X. You can follow me at Andrew Moore NFL, and we'll be back Tuesday night, because guys, Monday is Christmas. Drake and I are going to be with our families, as you all should be. You shouldn't be watching us on YouTube. You should be hanging out with your family, your loved ones on Christmas, enjoying the holiday like Drake and myself. So we'll be back on Tuesday night to break everything down from the Colts and the Falcons. It should be a hell of a good one at Mercedes-Benz Stadium there in Atlanta. So everybody, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Hope you join it. Hope you go and experience the holidays with your family, and you guys can all cheer on a Colts victory on Sunday as well. So for Drake and myself, we'll see you Tuesday night.